Is the new Greta Van Fleet album Starcatcher worth a listen? Let's find out. Hey everybody, it's Nick here with you. Welcome back to the Rock Squad channel and welcome to my rock album review for the much anticipated new album from Greta Van Fleet. It's called Starcatcher.
Got a whole lot of love. Got a whole lot of love.
Ooh, sorry, wrong band. Before we get to it, guys, if you love to rock out as much as we do here on the Rock Squad channel, make sure to smash that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future videos. Make sure to like this video. We'd appreciate that. And make sure to share this video online with your friends and fellow Greta Van Fleet fans. Starcatcher is the third studio album from Greta Van Fleet. It's the follow-up to 2021's Battle at Garden's Gate. And you know, I have a complicated history with Greta Van Fleet and this channel. You know, I think they're a very talented group of musicians, and they definitely deserve all the success that they've gotten over the years. But if you've seen my previous reviews that I've done on the YouTube channel here for their previous albums, I'll link those up for you here so you can check them out. Then you know that I obviously have knocked them in the past for being a lot like Led Zeppelin. That's a common criticism that Greta Van Fleet has gotten over the years, and rightfully so. You know, I think with Greta Van Fleet, I think I've said in my previous reviews that it's derivative. You know, they're talented, but they're very derivative of Led Zeppelin. They've really just kind of followed the Zeppelin rule of rock and their rule book of rock over the years, and kind of just taken from that. And I've always said that with Greta Van Fleet, you know, every band has inspiration. Every band has bands that have inspired them, but with Greta Van Fleet, it's almost like imitation over inspiration. And you know, fans have ripped me apart in the YouTube comments on a lot of the videos for the reviews that I put up in the past, and rightfully so, because I know a lot of people are passionate about Greta Van Fleet. But the thing is that to me, they just seem kind of, I don't want to say phony, that's a bad word to use, but they just seem kind of disingenuous. They seem like they're kind of playing dress up. They're kids playing dress up, whereas Led Zeppelin in the 70s were men who wore cool clothes and were the most rockin' band and best band on the planet. Greta Van Fleet are just kind of more like, they seem like little kids who are playing dress up when they're out there doing their thing. And I'm sorry, but they're very talented at what they do. And the thing that really bothers me about maybe Greta Van Fleet fans more than the band themselves is that a lot of bands say, well, now Greta Van Fleet has finally brought rock back, and it's great to have a rock band again. And that is just, I hate that opinion, because there has been nothing but nonstop great rock bands ever since the 60s. Through every decade and era, there have been great rock bands. There's more great rock bands on the planet now than there ever have been. And I think that's something that you have to do as a rock fan, is if you want to discover great bands, all you have to do is look beyond the edge of your nose and maybe beyond what you're spoon-fed on the radio. And the thing is, anybody who watches this channel knows that I just love music in general. I love rock music in general. My taste in rock music ranges all over the place. I love classic rock. I love indie rock. I love modern rock, alternative rock. I love metal. I pretty much love everything. So I want to go into, when I'm listening to albums, I want to go in there and I want to like this album, and I want to like this band, you know, because I don't think of myself as a very judgmental music fan. I think of myself as a very open-minded music fan. But even with Greta Van Fleet, although I think this new album, Starcatcher, is a solid effort, I still can't get over the Led Zeppelin comparisons, and I feel like the band hasn't really evolved their sound. You know, the thing I would say about Starcatcher is there's a lot of great things happening. There's a lot of great epic instrumentation going on. You have acoustic guitars, electric guitars. You have a lot of great textures and dynamics happening throughout this record, and the band sounds fantastic. But then the songwriting to me is a little bit weak as well. Singer Josh Kishka is doing a lot of things vocally that are incredible. There are definitely things that I can't even do as a singer, so I definitely commend him for everything that he can do with the range of his voice. Not everybody can pull off that kind of stuff, so he's definitely got a great voice. But then melodically, there's not a lot going on. There's a lot of wailing, there's a lot of going on, but there's not a lot of melody and a lot of memorable things going on other than what's happening with the instrumentation. But you know what? Let's get to each of the songs on this record, the ones that I liked and the ones that I didn't like. Let's go track by track. Starcatcher kicks off with the song called Fate of the Faithful, and I thought this song kicked off with a really awesome organ solo. You know the album is going to be epic when there's an organ solo to kick things off. This is a very classic rock move, which is okay. It's okay to do that and kick things off with an organ solo. I thought the song had a really epic sound, and I think I'll give that to Greta Van Fleet. They know how to create that kind of epic stadium rock sound that is akin to a lot of the great bands, you know, of the 60s and 70s and throughout the years. You know, even bands like Guns N' Roses and AC AC/DC and that kind of thing. I totally get their influences, Rush, that kind of thing as well. So they know how to compose and put together a good song. And I think there's variables on this album. There are some songs that I feel where they are doing some new things that I think are really cool, and then some that I think that they're just kind of they're retreading the things that they've done before. But I think this is, in general, maybe not my favorite song on the album. I think there are stronger tracks on this record, but I think this is a strong opener, and it showcases the band's talent. So Fate of the Faithful, to me, is a pretty solid opening track. Then we get to a song called Waited All Your Life, and this song didn't really do much for me. It kind of just meandered. It didn't really stand out to me, and I thought, for a second song on the album, this one didn't really have the punch that a second song needs to have. And every record that I listen to on this channel, there's always an ebb and flow to each record. They start out strong, they get weaker. There's ebbs and flows. Some start weaker and some start stronger. And I think with this album, there are songs later on in the record that could have been substituted for this one to make things a little bit stronger in the first half of the record. And again, with the lead singer just kind of wailing, there's not really a lot of sing-along element, at least for me. I find it hard to be at a Greta Van Fleet concert and be able to sing along with a lot of these songs because he's doing so much vocally. And I think the first two songs, there are better songs on the record. This is one of my favorites, but it's okay. So Waited All Your Life it's all right. Then we get to a song called The Falling Sky, which I believe was the first single that was released from Starcatcher a few months back. This one has a good riff in it. It's got a kick-ass intro. It rocks. It's a pretty good song. Maybe not as strong as some of the Greta Van Fleet singles of the past. When I think of a great, Greta Van Fleet single, I really like. I think Highway Tune is a good Greta Van Fleet single, and I think they've had some other ones over the years. This maybe not be the best single by the band, but I think it's a really strong song and one of the better songs on Starcatcher. Then we get to a song called Sacred the Thread. The thing I will say about Greta Van Fleet is they have a lot of kind of mystical, cool sounding song titles on here that don't actually make a lot of sense. Like Sacred the Thread, Fate of the Faithful, The Archer, Meeting the Master. They have all these kind of epic titles, which to me is like they're kind of trying too hard with some of the titles and some of the subject matter they're trying to get to on this record. Like maybe they're writing about eagles and shit. I'm not too sure. But this Sacred the Thread, the first thing that I thought when the song kicked in, I'm sorry for the Led Zeppelin comparison, was When the Levee Breaks, which has that great John Bonham drum fill intro on that song, and Sacred the Thread starts out pretty much exactly the same. I thought it had a melody that wasn't really that memorable. It didn't really stick in my head, and it being at least 6 minutes long for a lot of these songs. A lot of songs are very lengthy. And this is one of them, so it makes it for a little bit of a labored listen on my part. Although they had a really good drum intro that was Led Zeppelin-esque, Sacred the Thread was not so great for me. Then we get to a song called Runway Blues, which is one of my favorite songs on the record. It only clocks in, I think, like less than a minute and a half, but it was one of those quick, really rocking songs. It was a little bit more rock and roll than the kind of the epic, prog rocky stuff that they're doing elsewhere on this record. So I thought this one was really great. I think they should do more of that kind of fast and loose rock and roll kind of stuff. A lot of rock bands right now are in their epic phase. When I did a review of the new Rival Sons album, Dark Fighter, it was the same kind of thing where Rival Sons is kind of a loose, roly-poly rock and roll band that you can have a lot of fun with. And then on this new record, they're doing all these really epic things, which of course Led Zeppelin, albums like this, Houses of the Holy, they did a lot of that as well, but they still maintain their rock and roll element throughout their career. So I wish there was a little bit more rock and roll like this song, but I thought Runway Blues was a really great track. Then we get to a song called The Indigo Streak, which has another cool title. And this one was super catchy. Probably one of my favorite songs on the album. I thought it had a cool groove. I felt that it was less derivative, less impressionistic of some of the band's influences, and it was a little bit more original. And I think that's one of my main criticisms of this album, is that they have to keep evolving as a band. If Greta Van Fleet wants to break free of the criticisms of them sounding like Led Zeppelin or AC/DC or Rush or whichever classic band you want to compare them to, they really have to evolve their sound. They really have to try a little bit harder to do things that are different than that. They're still staying within a certain mold, but I thought this one broke out just a little bit, and The Indigo Streak was probably one of my favorite tracks on the album. Then we get to a song called Frozen Light, and this I thought had the strongest riff of the bunch. If there was another criticism that I was going to levy at this album, I do like a lot of songs on this record, I think there should be more memorable riffs. I know there's tons of riffs happening on here. There's acoustic riffs, there's electric riffs, there's lots of layered texture. textures, lots of great guitar stuff happening on this album, don't get me wrong, but maybe not a lot of just catchy, 4-bar, 8-bar riffs that I can really get behind. But the song Frozen Light had one that I really liked. It was still Zeppelin-esque, like a lot of songs on this record, but I thought it was okay. It was a decent song and had the strongest riff on Starcatcher, and I really dug Frozen Light. Then we get to a song called The Archer, which, like a lot of the tracks on this record, had some great guitar work on there. Very Jimmy Page, but what's wrong with that? And I think a lot of people say, well, like Led Zeppelin isn't around anymore, so what's wrong with Greta Van Fleet taking over and carrying the torch of Led Zeppelin? And that's very much what they're doing on a song called The Archer. And this is the kind of song that they do in their sleep. Like I said, Greta Van Fleet has a certain style. They do some more rock and roll-y kind of stuff. They do more kind of that stadium rock, epic, proggy kind of stuff. But I think they still need to evolve their sound a little bit more on their next record. They're 3 records in. I think they have to try and change things up a little bit more, but I thought The Archer was a pretty good song. And, it was a strong song towards the end of Starcatcher. Then we get to a song called Meeting the Master, which is another single that was released before the release of Starcatcher. It had a killer guitar solo on it. It started out with some really shiny acoustic guitars. And I think with this song, it kind of illustrates what Greta Van Fleet is doing. If we're going to compare them to Led Zeppelin, I know a lot of people are going to hate me for that, but compare them to Led Zeppelin. It's almost like on their first couple of records, they were doing like Led Zeppelin 1, Zeppelin 2, and now on this record, they've kind of gotten more into the Zeppelin 3, Zeppelin 4, and Houses of the Holy phase, doing all sorts of acoustic guitar kind of stuff and being a little bit more epic and a little bit less straight rock and roll. So I think they've entered their Houses of the Holy phase, but I thought this was really pleasant and kind of reminded me of Over the Hills and Far Away.
Hey lady, you got the love I need. Maybe more than enough.
Then we get to the last song on Starcatcher. It's called Farewell for Now. And this, again, reminded me of the Led Zeppelin song, Hey, Hey, What Can I Do? Which was one of the best Led Zeppelin B-sides ever. I think it's actually the only Led Zeppelin B-side ever. But this is actually a little bit Rival Sons-esque as well. Another rock and roll band that I really love out there doing these things these days. And I really like the Guns N' Roses influence on there as well. I know they have more influences than just Led Zeppelin. They got Guns N' Roses, AC/DC, Rush, all sorts of things going on in there. I know it's not just Led Zeppelin, even though that's obviously the most obvious comparison that we can make. But I thought this was generally a strong song to finish the album. So Farewell for Now was a good track to end off Starcatcher. So overall, I thought that Greta Van Fleet's new album, Starcatcher, was a solid effort. I think with Josh Kishka's voice, he's got a great voice, but it kind of grated on my nerves after a while. It was a little bit hard to listen to after a while. So much wailing and kind of just grandiose vocals going on that it was hard to remember a lot of the melodies. And it was like, how do you sing along with this kind of stuff? It was a little bit easier to sing along with Led Zeppelin. I think obviously Led Zeppelin, unfortunately for Greta Van Fleet, Led Zeppelin were the superior songwriters because they managed to combine all those epic elements while still having great, catchy, really memorable and classic songs. And I don't think Greta Van Fleet has really gotten there on this album, Starcatcher, even though they are trying their best, And the thing is that, like I said, there's so many comparisons. There's almost like a Led Zeppelin counterpart to every song on this record. You hear one of the songs, you're like, oh, that's the Battle of Evermore. You hear this song, you're like, oh, that's Over the Hills and Far Away. You hear this song, you're like, oh, that sounds like this, and that sounds like this Zeppelin track. And that's really something that they have to break out of. This is their third record. If they want people to stop making comparisons to the Zepp, then they have to evolve a little bit more as a band. I don't think that there's a lot of great melodies, like I said, happening on this album. I think the band are obviously great musicians. They play incredible. Lead singer's got an incredible voice. Very talented guys, very talented musicians. They deserve to be doing what they're doing. But there wasn't a lot there for me to grab onto. It was kind of by the numbers, and like I said, it's like they've moved through different phases of Zeppelin's career, kind of mimicking. The first couple albums were a little bit more rock and roll, like Zeppelin 1 and Zeppelin 2, and then now they're moving into their Houses of the Holy and Zeppelin 4 phase, which is okay. They're talented guys, so obviously they can pull it off. But I wish the band would expand a little bit more, do new things. I'm hoping on their next record that they break out of this even more and try to really do something new that will break them free of the comparisons that I and a lot of people keep making towards their music. So overall, I'm going to give the new album from Greta Van Fleet called Starcatcher a solid 3 out of 5. And that is it, guys. That is my review of the new album from Greta Van Fleet called Starcatcher. Let me know what you thought of the record in the comments below. Hopefully you guys will be kind. I think I was kind to the band. I did make my Zeppelin comparisons, but otherwise, I think I gave the band their kudos and I gave them a fair listen. Like I said, I like everything, and I really wanted to like this, this record, and I do like it. I just didn't Love it. Not really a record I'm going to go back and listen to again, but let me know in the comments what you thought of the new record from Greta Van Fleet. Make sure to subscribe to us here on the channel. This is your first time. We love talking about all things rock here on the channel. Make sure to like this video and make sure to share this video online with your friends and fellow Greta Van Fleet fans, your fellow rock fans. Make sure to share this video. Actually, I just said that. Make sure to follow us on social media at Rock Squad Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and then make sure to check out my band as well. If you're into Oasis or Weezer, Smashing Pumpkins, Foo Fighters, that kind of thing, you can check us out at foolsunion.com. Got another rock album review coming up for you on the channel this weekend. My review of the new album from Blur called The Ballad of Darren. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But I'll see you guys again for another rock album review here on the Rock Squad channel. Until then, rock on, everybody.